All right, so a Docusign walkthrough today. So we're going to start in Command because for Docusign, you always want to start by making an opportunity. You never want to start by making a room, which is a loop. So a loop and a room are the same thing. So
Okay.
Docusign, they're called rooms. So that's one thing, just to kind of get your mind wrapped around that.
I learned something already.
Yeah. So you always want to go to the opportunities, and obviously you have to have connected Docusign to your command, which is done through settings. And in the Docusign study guide that I sent out, there's a short video on how to connect the two. But you'll want to make sure that they're linked because that's how they talk to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and just start from scratch, just to kind of walk you through the whole thing. So when you create an opportunity in Command, that's how your room is going to get created. So very similar to .loop. So as I'm in opportunities, I'll go to create an opportunity. And remember, you have to have a contact. So I made one up. So me and my husband have been watching Ozark lately. So my contact is Wendy Bird.
I got to go back and do that one again. I finished it.
Yeah. I'm not done yet, so no spoilers.
I won't say a word.
So I did a buyer.
If I want to watch it, I hear all kinds of different reviews of it. So
yeah. I did a buyer on Wednesday, so I'll do a listing today. So, you would name your opportunity with like the address. So like 123 Street, right? When you put in your client here, it's going to pull into Docusign all of their contact information. So if you also had a co-seller, like their spouse, you could put them here and they'll pull that information as well. And so then the only other thing that's important or required is the commission rate. So we'll put that as a 3, which you can always change later. So as you're here in the detail section, so the actual way that Command and Docusign are laid out is very similar. So in Command, you have a detail section and you have a document section. And in Docusign, you also have a details and a documents. And so it's just kind of important to keep those separate in your mind. So Command is how you communicate with the market center for compliance and to get paid. Docusign is how you communicate with your clients and how you receive signatures. Right? So they both serve 2 different functions. So it's important to keep that in your mind. As Docusign and Command start to communicate more and more efficiently together, everything you put in the detail section of Command will sync up to the detail section of Docusign. As of right now, not everything syncs, so you may have to just kind of play around with that. But what I've heard from the region is that, every week when they're updating, they're starting to get more and more like married together. So that's exciting. In your listings, if you can select from listing up here, I'm not going to do that right now because this isn't a real listing, but you can select from listings up here and it'll load that information in. And then you can also use the pencil icons to edit there. So I'm going to go over to documents. So this is how I'm going to actually set up my room. So I'm going to do residential because that's typically what everyone does, right? I have my 3 different categories here. Up on the top right corner, there's this button called Start a Transaction. So when you first start the opportunity, that's what it's going to say, Start. And so when I click it, you'll see that now I have the option to choose between Docusign and .loop because currently we're still in that kind of gray area between the 2. And so obviously for this class, I'm going to choose Docusign, but I do want you guys to know that you can only make this decision for each opportunity 1 time. So as we're in this kind of gray area, it's important that you're taking a minute to decide, am I going to do this transaction in .loop or am I going to do it in Docusign? Because once you pick one, it's not going to let you take it back. The only way to undo it is to go back and lose the opportunity and then start from scratch. So it's just a quick note. So obviously I'll choose Docusign. And since my pop-up blocker is not on, it opens up immediately into Docusign. And the first time every day that you get into Docusign, it makes you log in.
Hey, Kayla, one quick question.
Yeah.
You need to, I think this is probably stupid, but so you need to create a Docusign login and account before connecting Command and Docusign? Okay.
Yeah, and there's a video in the Docusign study guide on how to create your account. But yes, you do have to do that. So you'll notice that Docusign has opened, and it's opened in the document section here. So just like I said earlier, there's document sections in both, and there's also detail sections in both. It's going to always open you straight into documents because, like I said earlier, eventually the detail section is going to get filled out completely in Command. But right now you do need to go over there to the left to details and fill in some things so that your forms will auto-populate. So you'll notice that the name is pulled, exactly what I called it in Command. And here on the right-hand side is Wendy and her contact information that I put in Command. I'm going to press this edit button at the top right, and that's going to make everything fillable. And I'm just going to show you guys, so this right side column is super important. This is how you put people in that you're going to need signatures from. So here's Wendy, seller 1. As I scroll down, I have that opportunity for seller 2. So her husband's name is Marty. So this could have also been pulled from Command had I done that. And you'll notice I'm putting my own email in there because I feel like that's a nice way to see, like when you're playing around, like it's nice to be able to see what your clients actually get to their inbox. So I put my own email in there so I can see it.
Now, can I stop you just a second?
Yeah.
I have a question. I was writing as you were, I probably should have just watched, but you've already added the forms?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so then I don't know how you got to this point.
I went over to details. Mm-hmm.
To details. Okay, I hit documents. That's where I messed up.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll get there because that's like the main point of this class, right? But you want to fill out the details section first because that way when you're pulling forms, the information from the details will get pulled into your forms, and you'll see what I mean by that. So a quick note is that this order of this right side column is always the same. The sellers are always first. So you'll notice then I have to keep scrolling down. There's the listing agent, that's me. I could add in another listing agent, and then finally I get to buyer 1, right? So if you're doing a buyer opportunity, you're gonna have to scroll down to see their information, right? So you might think, no, there's no buyer, but it's there. It's just that every time it's the same order: seller, listing agent, buyer, buyer agent. So that's important. And then in here, like this is where you would add all of the things like contract date, the close date, all of the stuff that you know is going to be necessary for forms. You can put it in there. That way you don't have to like type it into the form. So you want to keep this as up to date as, your own personal preference, because then you can save time later, which is nice. Then you can save at the bottom right. So that's the details section. So that's how you add your clients in. That's how you could add in a teammate. It's how you can add in your co-op agent on the other side of the deal. And if you wanted to, you could even add the other client's information, like once you figure out who the buyer is. But again, that type of stuff, like there's a lot of times where I'm just going to say, really, it just comes down to your own personal workflow. How do you usually run your systems? I just want to make sure you guys know what Docusign can do, but I mean, how you use it would be totally up to you. So then the documents is the next tab. So this is probably, this and envelopes is going to be the place that you hang out the most in Docusign. So the documents on the top right, you have this add button here. And we're going to focus mainly on these top two. So you can add from computer, which would be like adding a PDF that you've been sent. And then you can add Docusign forms. Those are the interactive fillable forms that Docusign has made for us. And so we're going to do Docusign forms first, and then we'll do a computer. So as I click Docusign forms, I'm going to get to this page here, add Docusign forms. Now, the first time you ever do this, you may be asked for your NERDS number, which you can skip that step. And you also might get to an option that asks you to choose your forms provider, and you can skip that step as well. And then it only makes you do that once, and then you'll start to get to this screen right away. And if you're ever like, the first time you're doing it and you're confused, like, please just call me and I'll happily walk you through it. So you can, when you choose the Docusign Forms library, which is the default, and then you go down here, that's where you have like the 3 types of forms that we have. But if you switch to group on the top, then they're separated as a buyer packet and a listing packet, kind of like dot loop. So we went ahead and separated them so that you could, we have a listing, I think. You could do listing, and you can, these are the forms, all the forms you need for a listing, and you can select all, or you can just choose one. So I'll just choose the team disclosure, just for fun. And then you can add down here. So again, that would be up to you. Like, do you want to load them all in at the same time, or do you want to load them in as you need them? Whatever you want. Okay. So you'll notice here this icon, this form icon lets you know that this is a fillable form or an interactive. And this will change to a green check mark whenever everybody has signed the document. So I'm going to click on this, and it's going to pull it up, and it's going to allow me to edit the document. So I can click into the text boxes, and I can start typing. I can press tab to go to the next field. I can choose, the seller, because this is a listing. Now, with the radio buttons, one funky thing that Docusign does right now is once you choose one, you can switch, but you can't unchoose. Like, notice I'm clicking this seller and nothing is happening. So in this form, like, I'm going to choose seller or buyer no matter what. But there are other forms where you might want to just leave it blank. And it would be important to note to yourself and maybe to your clients that once you choose something, you've chosen something, so you can't unclick it. And I don't know if I don't know if Docusign considers that a bug or if that's just a feature. So,
okay.
And as you're editing, if you are going to type into a document, you do need to save it before you move on, or it will not look like this when you go to send it to your client. And then this guy up here, this document actions, that's going to be things like renaming, emailing it, download it, print it, and then the big one, which is Docusign, which is how you send it to your clients. So we're about to do that. So I'm going to save it. Okay. And so I just showed you how you could Docusign it through the document, but you can also hover over, click this little circle icon, and then notice now these options have come up here. And the middle one, the pen icon, is always DocuSign. So that's how you send it to clients. So we'll do that. So now it creates what's called an envelope, which is the next like vocabulary word for DocuSign. So you can think of it like an actual physical physical envelope, right? So, you know, if you're writing a card to somebody, you're going to fill it out, which is what we just did, and then you're going to stuff it in an envelope, and that envelope is what gets sent to the client. So that's what you can think of here. This is my physical mailing envelope, and I'm about to send it to them. I'm just going to go through this whole page. Now, keep in mind, this is never going to take you as long as it's about to take me, because I'm going to walk through like each feature, whereas you're just going to do exactly what you need in that situation. So the envelope name at the top is always auto-populated as please DocuSign. So you may want to change that so that, like, I'll show you later when you're looking at all of your envelopes, like, if you didn't change it, they would all just say, please DocuSign. So the whole thing would be like, please DocuSign, please DocuSign. So you may want to say like, oh, this is my team disclosure, right? Or however you would usually say that. And you can send multiple documents at once. If I did do that, then I also have in this section the chance to reorder them in whatever order I want. So if for some reason I want, you know, I want to be particular about the order in which my clients are reading things, you can click and drag, and you could imagine if there was more than one, I would just kind of reorder them, you know, left to right. Okay. Here, when you're adding recipients to the envelope, so that's how you add who you want to sign them. So when you click add recipients, you have 3 options, and I'll go through each of them kind of quickly. So the pre-tagged roles, that is always going to be what you want to do when you're using a DocuSign form, because what that means is that whenever they formatted each document, they tagged them with like buyer 1, seller 1, listing agent, stuff like that. So you want to assign your clients to those fields so that they're already put in the right place. So that's always going to be the one that would make it most efficient for you to use with these sorts of forms. And then room participants is just going to allow you to add anybody that's in that details section that we talked about at the beginning. And then email address is going to be how you just manually can add people. So I'm going to do pre-tagged roles and show you that you'll see that it has just 2 authorized signers because the team disclosure could be for buyers or sellers. So then this is just telling me that this is the document it's on, which would be helpful if we had more than one document. And then I can add my people. So I can say, okay, Wendy's going to be signer 1 and Marty will be signer 2. And then I can add selected. And there they are. I could, maybe this is a form that I need Lori's signature on. So that's where I might use the email address option, right? And I might say, you know, H. Lorraine Molnar, and type in her email, and then she's getting this document as well. A lot of options here. The first being this column of numbers. So this is pretty neat. So DocuSign will send an envelope in waves if you want it to. I think waves is like the easiest way to explain it. So right now they all have a number 1, which means they're all going out in the first wave, which means they're all getting it at the exact same time. But if for some reason I wanted certain people to sign in a certain order, then I can change those numbers. So for example, like the mutual release document, I need Lori's signature on that, but I know she's not going to sign it until everybody else has signed it. So what I can do is I can change her number 1 to a number 2. And that means that she's going out in the second wave, which means DocuSign will send the first wave to Wendy and Marty. And whenever they sign it, it will automatically send it to Lori in the second wave. But it's going to wait until that first wave is over. So that's kind of cool, I think. But I don't actually need Lori, so I'm going to X her out because I was just using her as an example. And then up here, so you have the options here, you know, needs to sign, or maybe they just need to look at it, or they get a copy of it. You have the options here in more to add access authentication, which is a fancy word for adding a password or adding a private message. So maybe you have a client that might be a little hesitant about electronic signatures and they're getting a little paranoid. You can offer, hey, why don't I password protect this document? And that way I'll give you the password and you know that not just anybody who stumbled on this link would be able to look at your documents. That might make them feel a little bit more secure. And so if I wanted to do that, I would click that and then enter in the password here. But I don't want to do that. Okay. And then as you scroll down, your last option is the message. So again, the subject line is always going to be please Docusign. This is what the actual email will look like when it goes to your client. So you can change this to whatever you want, like hello from Capital Partners. And then you can put an email message like call me with any questions. You can do whatever you want there. You can also leave it blank because that's totally up to you. So that is really all of the options that you have here in this envelope details page. If you realized, oh no, I forgot a document, you can always go add here from Room Docs. That's an option. Any questions so far?
No.
What? So I don't need to press save and close at this point because I'm going to go directly to the next part, which is like the adding signatures part. But I could save and close and then I can go to actions here. Or I can save and close and then it'll save it as a draft. I can also go to actions here and delete it if I realize that, oh shoot, like this is all wrong. I can start over that way. But I like this, so I'm going to move on to next. My computer does not like the internet in Kim's office, so you'll notice that it goes a little slow sometimes. I don't really know why. I think it's because I'm all the way back here in the back. Okay, so this is the part where we're going to spend a lot of time. So this document is a Docusign form, so the signatures have already been added for us. You'll notice that they're color-coded. So if you see in the top left, Wendy is in yellow, and if I click down, I see that Marty is in the blue. So that's how you know what little icon goes to which client. If you wanted to add anything, you can add anything you want to this document now that we're here. Like if you notice that, oh shoot, they're missing a signature box or they're missing the date signed, then you can add that. Now, I will say if you do find anything that's like a form isn't formatted correctly, please let either myself or Joanne know, and we can work on getting that fixed. But in the meantime, like say for some reason this signature box wasn't here, you just add it and then move on and let us know, but don't feel like you have, like the form isn't usable because you can still add that for yourself. And we'll talk a lot about what it looks like to build a form yourself when we talk about the PDF. But I did just want to make that note that it's not a lost cause if you just notice a little thing that's wrong. So I would just kind of look at this. Okay, my signatures are there. I like it. I'm ready to send it. I can choose recipient preview and it'll load what the client is going to see. And it actually gives me the option to look at it as a computer. as a tablet or a phone, which is kind of neat.
Mhm.
I don't know. Like if you knew you had, I feel like, especially like maybe if you had an older client and you know they're going to have a lot of questions, it might be nice to know like, okay, this is exactly what you're seeing. You can kind of follow along. Or if you know somebody's like going to be on the road and they're going to be on their phone and their screen is tiny and you want to just make sure everything looks good, you can look at it that way. So when I send it, it's going to actually send this to be signed. So I press send. I go get a drink of water, and then here it goes. So now we're in the envelope section. So you'll notice we're up here, whereas here's documents and details. So here's my team disclosure document or envelope. This would have just said, please DocuSign here had I not changed it. And it gives me a real good visual cue of waiting for others. When Marty and Wendy have both signed this, it turns into a real big green check mark. So that's nice because you can look at your at the end of a transaction, or as you're working, you're going to get more and more envelopes, and you can just visually see across the board like, where are we at? And maybe it says waiting for others, but you're like, I know that Wendy signed it, right? So I can click on this envelope and it's going to pull out or give me even more specific details. Like maybe it says, oh, Wendy has signed, but Marty hasn't. And then you know exactly who you need to talk to. And this is where you would resend it. If for some reason they lost the email, they can't find it, you can resend it here. You don't have to start over. So that's nice. So I can X out at the top right. So that is a DocuSign form. And so I'll go back to documents and show you what it looks like to add a PDF. So I'm going to press the add button here at the top. I'm going to go from computer. And earlier this week, I downloaded the agency disclosure. Now this is in there. We are still currently, as of May 8th, just in case someone's watching the recording, we are still waiting for a couple of forms to be added into DocuSign, and that'll be done by next week for sure. But the agency disclosure is in there. It just is what I chose as my PDF for an example. So right away you can see the difference between the two because this is a PDF and this is an actual interactive form. So I'm going to click this check mark and I'm going to DocuSign it because there's nothing for me to do with this PDF in the document section because it's not fillable. So agency disclosure. And then when I go to add recipients, you'll notice that there is no pre-tagged roles anymore because the PDF doesn't have anything in it to be formatted. So you would have to use room participants or manually enter everybody in. But I would recommend room participants because as you see, Wendy and Marty, their information is in there from my details section and I don't have to type anything. And none of the rest of this is any different for PDF because it's the same as earlier. So I'll go to next. And this is where you can do so much at this next screen. It's crazy. You can just build a whole thing from the ground up, which is really cool. So here's my agency disclosure. So I have Wendy and Marty here in the different colors. So I can add any of these things here. Any of these options can be added. So maybe I want to fill in you know, I'm just dragging and dropping at this point. And now I'm clicking in the text box and I can type. And then I can click on this and actually just change it to read only and take off the required field. That way Marty doesn't have to do anything with this. It's just in there for him. And I can, you know, I could do the same thing, or I could drag this name here. And that's going to pop up for Marty, and then he's going to click on it and type his name, right? So I could type in, you know, and then I could switch to Wendy and ask her to also put her name. So that's what all of these do here. They're text boxes for your clients, but they're text boxes that specifically tell them exactly what you want them to type in there. And then of course it would be totally up to you if you wanted to do that for them. You could just do a text box instead. And then you could scroll down, and this is where you would add the signatures. You can drag these corner boxes to make them fit if you want. And anytime you put a signature, you also have to put in the date signed. So when they go to sign the form, it'll automatically fill in the date and time, like a timestamp. But Docusign only knows to do that if you put the date signed in there. So just remember, as you drag a signature, you drag in the date. I can switch over to Marty. And then you have these options like a note to your client. You know, there's my text, my radio buttons. Like if I needed to add these in here, I could drag them and then click on this second guy and drag him down to be over there. And then it's important over here, like, is it required or not? Because, you know, like I said earlier, they can't unclick it. So if it's not required that they pick one of these two, then you want to make that unrequired over here. And then they can still do it because it's not read only. They can still interact with it, but they don't have to. It'll let them submit the form without it without anything chosen. And then the only other thing, so as far as the trainings I've taken, the only other thing you might leave this standard fields for is to go to this pencil icon here for the markup tools. And that's where you would get your line to be able to strike things out. So you would take this and you would drag it in, and then you could drag this guy to be, you know, as big as you need it to be. Right, and so I am gonna go at the end of the month. Scott Leroy is having a Docusign 201 class. And in that case, they might go over these, but as far as the trainings that I've seen, everything that you're going to need to do, you can do with this markup tool and the standard fields. But feel free to play around with those. And if you find something awesome, let me know, because I'd love to teach people about it. But and so that's pretty much all I have on this page. This, when you're doing a PDF, that might be where you would really look at the recipient preview. So because you've really built this from the ground up for yourself. So that's where you may want to just double check. I don't know what sort of students you guys were, but I was not the student that could do like rough drafts or check my work or any of that. I was always like, if I didn't find it the first time, I wasn't going to find it the second time, and I would just turn stuff in, but got in trouble a couple times because of that. So like, as I'm Marty, right, I can see, oh, and look, it automatically pulled their names. They don't actually have to type them. That's neat. And then here's my buttons here. And here's his signature. And then you'll notice here, it automatically puts the date and the time. Now, the Eastern time zone, I'll tell you, this little trick, I had to go in and change my preferences to be Eastern time to Central, or it was Central time, and I had to change it to Eastern time. So that might be something that you check on your own account. And I put that in the Docusign study guide, how you can change it. Because for some reason, I think it defaults to Central. And then I had an agent tell me that theirs was Pacific, but you only have to change it one time. So just take a note of that. And then up here is what I was saying earlier, how you can switch between the different devices. So X that out. Okay. And then if I decide I like it, you know, I can edit it more, or I can go ahead and send it at the top right. I forgot to ask if you guys had questions on that screen, so I hope that you did not, because I moved on. But if you do, let me know. So there are my 2 envelopes that we've sent. So you can see now how this might have been confusing had I not changed the titles. If they both said, please DocuSign, it's like, well, I have to click it to find out which is which. So again, personal workflow, but something to think about. I'll show you in the document section. So here, if you wanted to send multiple documents at a time, you can hover and click the circle icon. Hover, click the circle, and you'll have this DocuSign option here. So that would send them to the clients at the same time. So if you wanted to just do 1 envelope instead of 2. And if you need to rename a document, so something to note. So notice how this says like agency team disclosure revised 1015 and then agency disclosure statement. When I go to command to add my documents, I can't see a picture of the documents. I can just see the titles. So that's another thing to kind of consider in your workflow. If, you know, you scan in something and the title is just something kind of wonky, you may want to change them, because if not, you're not going to know what the documents look like when you go to command. So you can do that by clicking on it and then going to the document actions up here and then rename. So I'm about to just show you how you can take these documents and pull them into command, which means I'm going to leave DocuSign and I'm not going to come back. So does anyone have any questions about anything on here before we go to command?
I don't think so. I don't.
Okay. So we'll toggle back over to command. So you'll notice here, it's changed from start transaction to sync and go to. So sync is going to take anything new from the details section in command and sync it to the details section in DocuSign. So if you add in the contract date, you know, it'll pull it over to DocuSign. And then go to transaction, this is how you're actually going to enter into DocuSign. So you go to command, you go to your opportunity, and then you go to transaction, and that'll take you into DocuSign. You can go straight into DocuSign by like typing in the URL, but I have heard our regional tech director, Shannon, say that it's best to go through command just to keep that synced between your command and DocuSign strong. That's what she has suggested. So I would stay in the habit of just starting in command rather than going to DocuSign through its website.
Kayla, you said, did you go to home to get back here, or are you in opportunities again?
I'm in opportunities, so I can go from home. So I can go into, so say I was just logging in for the first time today, right? Mm-hmm. I can go to opportunities. And it's funny, you guys are about to see how many different Wendy birds I have, because I keep forgetting to lose the opportunity after the class. So Wendy, pretty sure it's this one. And then I can go to documents. And then here I am. So I would go to transaction here. Okay. So the way to add files, so you have two options. I have this attach multiple files up here, which when you have more than one file to add, I believe is the best way to do it. But then you can also scroll down. Oh, I think these are both in under contract. Yeah, under contract, I can add this file here for agency disclosure. Oh, and the team disclosure is actually in the listed. So we actually can't use the attach multiple files, but I'll show you what that looks like. So if you wanted to attach, you would up here, switch from manual to Docusign. And then you would go to the document that you want it to line up with, so the team disclosure. I'm going to go to this drop down, and here are my two documents that are in my Docusign room. So like I said earlier, if they're not named correctly, you're not going to know which is which when you go to command, or at least I wouldn't know, right? You might remember like, oh, the one that ends in a 5 is the team disclosure, but so I would get in the habit of renaming them if necessary. So I can choose agency disclosure, and then the, team disclosure. The agency disclosure is in the under contract one, so I'm not going to see it here. So I'll press attach. But if they were in the same category, I could have attached them at the same time. And then under contract, here's the agency disclosure. The other way I can do that is to press add a file, switch over to Docusign, and choose my agency disclosure and assign. And then when I'm ready, I would submit it to the Market Center for compliance. And then I would also remember that the Market Center cannot see my opportunity unless I've moved it to under contract or closed. If it's in any of the other stages of your opportunities, we can't see it. So that's going to end up being more and more important. Right now, when we can't find something in command, we can go into your dot loop and we can try to find it that way. But we're not going to be able to do that same thing with Docusign. So everything has to be in command if you want the Market Center to be able to see it. So we're not going to be able to log into your, like, see your Docusign room like we can see your loops. And that's pretty much it. But there's definitely a little bit more time. So if you guys have any questions or want me to walk through anything else, I definitely can.
Okay, I just got a little lost as to how you, I'm pointing to my computer like you can see it.
Right.
How you added, I got lost from how you got into this section here on under contract where it says all the forms. Is that from the Docusign forms and they came up automatically?
So these
residential, you're on residential under contract. So was that because you were in a different opportunity?
Well, so are you talking about like all of these gray ones right here?
Yeah, well, over to the left where it says listed and under contract. So you had different opportunities. Whereas on my computer, I only have listed. I don't have any in under contract. So when you went in,
well, so like
how did you get to this page or this window?
These sections here are the same in all of your opportunities because these are the different folders that the Market Center has created.
Right.
You might be thinking more like when you're in all of your opportunities. So I'm going back to opportunities.
Yeah, I'm sort of like stuck in Docusign rooms, I think is where I am.
Oh, okay. Well, because I'm back in command now. Because yeah, I'm not really going to hang out in Docusign rooms at all because I'm always going to get into Docusign through my command.
Okay, so I'm back there now. Okay. I didn't realize that I was in the wrong, I was still in DocuRooms.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So like, I'm going to just open my opportunity. So it's in my cultivate section and I open it. Here it is right here. Wendy Bird, 123 Street.
Okay.
And then I'm going to the document section of command. So I'm not in Docusign right now.
Okay, I'm clicking on 123 Street. And yours was Wendy Bird. And then you clicked on what after that?
Documents at the top.
And I don't see that, so I've missed something somewhere.
So you're in your
Let me
opportunity.
click on it again to see.
Yeah. So,
Now it went. I must have not been clicking hard enough.
oh, okay.
So now I'm at documents.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to sync transaction or go to transaction. Do I have to do anything with sync transaction at this point?
No, so the only time you would sync transaction is if you've added anything to the details section of your command and you want it to sync with the details section of Docusign.
Okay, so it's just sort of marrying those two
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
when I need them.
Mm-hmm.
And then so then how did you get to compliance? Like if let's say I've got everything in there signed, we're ready to, we've closed, because I send it after we close, right? The way,
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think you can send it multiple times, but that's a better question for Joanne or Lori.
Okay.
But I can let you know.
but let's say I want to have it go to compliance. So how do I do that at that point?
You would do that on this right-hand side where it says submit to MC.
Okay,
Submit to Market Center.
and I don't see that. So I was on.
It might be because you don't have any documents loaded in, so there's nothing to submit.
I did for that one opportunity though. I had it on, yeah, I had the agency disclosure in there, but that should pop up and then that would be what I would submit. I don't.
Well, here, let me do this. We will pause.
No, it's just going to be a matter of playing around with this,
Yeah. So I'm gonna sign off, not sign off with you, Linda, but sign off with the recording. So bye, recording.
Uh-huh. Oh, shoot, I didn't know my whole voice was recorded.